Book of Heaven, Volume 22, Part 8. August 21st, 1927. How Jesus wants to end it with the world. The power of what is done in the divine will, in order to placate divine justice. As I was in my usual state, my adorable Jesus came all in a hurry, and throwing his arms around my neck, he clasped me so very tightly, telling me, "My daughter, I end it with the world. I can take no more. The offenses, the pains they give me are too many. Therefore it is necessary that I destroy them." I trembled in hearing this, and I said to him, "My love and my life, of course you suffer very much and can take no more, because you want to suffer alone. But if you shared your pains with me, you would suffer less, and would not reach the point of no longer being able to bear the poor creatures. Therefore let me take part in your pains. Let us share them together, and you will see how you will be able to bear them still. Hurry, do not suffer alone any longer. Try, O Jesus. You are right, you suffer very much. And this is why I pray you, let us share them together and placate yourself." Then, after much insistence, my sweet Jesus let me suffer. But those were the shadows of his pains. And yet I felt as though being destroyed, crushed. But I am unable to say what I suffered. And besides, about certain things, it is better to keep silent. Then, as though tired of his long suffering, Jesus hid within me in order to find some relief. And I felt myself being invested completely by Jesus. I saw the eyes of Jesus everywhere within me. And he told me that those eyes were tired of looking at the earth, and he was looking for shelter. The light of the eyes of Jesus fixed on various points of the earth, and the evils committed in those places were so many that light incited him to destroy them. I prayed him to spare them, placing his blood, his pains, his life, his eternal will before him. And Jesus, all goodness, told me, "My daughter, the power of the prayers, of the acts, of the pains suffered in my will is unreachable. While you were praying and suffering, my blood, my steps, my works were praying. My pains were being multiplied and repeated. So, all that is done in it gives me the occasion to repeat again what I did while being on earth. And this is the greatest act, in order to placate divine justice." Then, continuing my round in the divine volition, and not finding my sweet Jesus, I was lamenting within myself, and saying to myself, "How can it be that Jesus no longer comes so often as before? And while he tells the wonders of his will, and where one who lives in it can reach, instead of coming more often, he comes with more delay. Now, while I was thinking of this, my beloved Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, my humanity hides within you, and I give place and large field to my divine will, to let it operate freely, and to let it form its kingdom." There was once the free time in which my humanity had its field of action in you, and therefore it was always with you and by you. And my divine will let me do it, so that I might prepare you to receive the field of action made more extensive by the endless Fiat. And so I must let it do it. More so, since it does not prevent me from remaining with you, because we are inseparable. And while being with you, I delight in binding your soul like a tiny little bird with the thread of light of my will. And I make you fly in the immensity of it, flinging you into its innumerable acts, keeping in my hands the thread that holds you bound. And you, wandering away within its acts, lose sight of me, while I am waiting for you to follow all the acts of my divine will, to then pull the thread behind you. Before, you would not follow all of its acts. You would follow the small circle of the acts of my humanity, which is small in comparison to the acts of my divine volition. And this is why each act and pain of yours would make you encounter your Jesus. And I was all intent on making you copy my humanity. Therefore, it was necessary that I keep the brush in my hand in order to form my image in you, to dispose the canvas of your soul, to receive the vivid colors, dipped in the light of my divine Fiat. What was necessary before is not necessary now. However, this does not mean that I am not with you. We live together within the eclipse formed by the light of an eternal will, and its light is so great as to eclipse us and make us lose each other. But if the light is dimmed, I can see you and you can see me, and we find each other as if we had never been separated. August 25th, 1927. Relations between the branches and the vine. The soul, depository of the divine will. While I was praying, I found myself outside of myself, and with my sweet Jesus in my arms. Clasping him tightly to my heart, I said to him, "Tell me, my love, what are the relations between you and me?" And Jesus, all goodness, told me, "My daughter, do you want to know? The relations that pass between you and me are like the relations that pass between the branches and the vine. The vine forms the branches, and they receive the vital humor from the vine in order to vegetate from the vine, to clothe themselves with leaves and with grapes. So there is such union between the vine and the branches that the branches can neither be formed nor have life without the vine, and the vine would make no impression or display of itself, nor would it give any fruit without the branches. Therefore there are such relations between the two of them, such bonds of union, that they form the same life and are inseparable from each other. And if they separate, the vine remains sterile, without display and without fruit, and the branches lose their life and wither. Now, the vine is your Jesus, and you are the branch. The relations between you and me are inseparable. One is the blood that circulates in our veins, one the will, one the heartbeat. I form your life, and you form my glory and my fruit. And I delight in resting in the shade of the thick leaves of your branch, and in picking the grapes of my vine, and in enjoying them as I please. But tell me more, my life, and your will, how is it in me? And Jesus added with unspeakable sweetness, My daughter, my will is in you as the depository of all its acts. In fact, when it does one act, my will does not deposit it outside of itself. The space, the decency, the sanctity would be lacking, as well as everything that is needed in order to preserve its acts. This is why it cannot place them anywhere else but within itself. Who can ever have the space to receive all the heavens with their stars, the sun with the expanse of its light, the sea with the vastness of its waters, the earth with the multiplicity of its plants? No one. Therefore, in order to be able to deposit its own acts, my divine will itself is needed. Now, since my will is in you, it makes the deposit of all its acts within you, because within its fiat it finds magnitude and sanctity worthy of itself. If you knew what the contentment of my eternal fiat is, in finding in the creature the space in which it can deposit its acts, which is their primary cause, because it is for the creature that they were done. Therefore all the acts of my divine will are in you, and from you they come out, bringing with them the glory that is due to them. Oh, how requited it feels in finding in all of its acts the creature giving glory to its light, to its sanctity, to its immensity. And in finding her kiss, glory, love, it feels so drawn as to form yet more beautiful acts, worthy of my eternal fiat, only for love of her in whom it can make the deposit of them, so as to receive her new kisses, her love, her glory. This is why, wherever my will is, there is everything. There is heavens, sun, sea, and everything. Nothing can it lack of all its works. It contains everything. It preserves everything. It has room for everything, so as to enclose everything within itself. August 28th, 1927. Sorrow of the divine will in each created thing. The conception of Jesus. The love of the soul. I was following the acts of the Supreme Volition according to my usual way, but while I was doing this, my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior. He was so very afflicted and weary, and was sighing with intense sorrow. I said to him, "What is the matter? What is it, my love? Why are you so afflicted and sorrowful?" And Jesus, "My daughter, if you knew how many sorrows my will receives, you would cry with me. In all creation, my will has its motion and its continuous act. It encompasses everything, and in all created things it holds out its incessant act to each creature. But not finding its own will in them, in order to give its act, on the contrary, it finds human wills, as though covered with mud. It is forced to place its act in order to preserve them. It feels tortured by the sorrow of placing in the mud the nobility, the sanctity, the purity of its divine acts. It does not find the cortege of its own divine will in its act that it deposits in the creature, and it suffers intensely. And I feel its sorrow in each of its acts, as well as in each act that it allows the creature themselves to do. If the creature speaks, operates, and walks, it is my divine will that makes itself primary motion of her word, work, and step. And yet it is not looked at. It is put aside, as if my volition were extraneous to her, while it holds the vital and essential part of her act. Oh, how it grieves in each act of the creatures, in seeing itself neither recognized, nor loved, nor looked at. There is nothing in creation that my will does not do. In the sun, it does its act of incessant light, in order to give light to creatures. And it looks for its own volition in them, in order to receive the cortege and the glory for its light. And not finding it, it grieves, because it does not find in them what matches its light. On the contrary, it finds in them darkness and coldness that offend its light and its heat. What sorrow! My volition does its continuous act in the air, and breathing in it, it forms a vital act in the air, such that, as creatures breathe it, they receive life. But while it gives life, it does not find in them the breath of its own divine volition, that breathing together with the creature would form divine life in her. What sorrow to give life and not to be able to form it in them. My will forms the food. It keeps so many elements in exercise: the earth, the wind, the sun, the air, the water, the seed, in order to form this food and give it to creatures, so as to find its own will in them. But no, it is in vain, and its sorrow becomes more intense. What does my will not do in the creation? There is nothing in which it does not hold its primary act of life, and it runs and runs incessantly toward the creature. It runs in the wind, in the water, in the earth, in the flowery fields, in the waves of the sea, in the outstretched heavens, everywhere. And it runs in order to find its will in creatures. And not finding it, it feels a sorrow in all things. It feels its own acts being snatched away from itself without serving its own volition. Oh, if the creatures could read the characters of my divine Fiat, in everything she sees, hears, touches, and takes, she would read the incessant sorrow of this volition of mine, that runs and will always run only to find my will in them, the only purpose for which man and all creation were created. And if it preserves the creature, it is so as to reach its purpose and give respite to so long a sorrow. This is the reason for all my cares, in order to make my divine will known, that it may reign and dominate. Everything will be given to its children, because they alone will remove the characters of sorrow, and will place the characters of joy, of glory, of happiness in all created things, because they will receive divine will through them, and divine will shall they let it find within themselves, rendering the just homages and the glory that is due to the acts that my will exercises in all creation. Then I continued to follow the acts of the Supreme Volition, and as I arrived at the point at which the Sovereign Queen conceived in her most pure womb, I said to myself, the height of my celestial mother provided her blood, her love, and the divine will reigning in her, in order to form the conception of the Word within herself. I too want to provide my love, my pains, and the divine will reigning in me, while she conceives in her womb, so that I too may place of my own in the conception of Jesus, so as to adore the eternal Fiat in such a great act, and also so that since I have given of my own, he may be conceived in me. But while I was doing this, I thought to myself, these are my usual strange things, but after all, it is love that I want to give to Jesus. It is his very divine will for the honor of his conception. And Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, it is I who move your soul to do what I want, and many times I do not even tell you the reason. You must know that my divine will had its first act in the conception of me, eternal Word, and your love and your acts are acts of justice, and are necessary for the conception of the divine will in the humanity of your Jesus, because the first kingdom it laid was in my humanity. Now, in order to give you the right that it might reign in you, with justice it demanded your love, while it conceived in my humanity. And since for my supreme fiat there is no past or future, but everything is present, while I conceived in the sovereign queen, I conceived in your love, in your pains, in that very volition that was to reign in you. There's a footnote about the word conceived, as used, conceived in the sovereign queen. It says, mentre concepivo. Jesus in his humanity is conceived in the womb of Mary Most Holy, and as the eternal Word, concurring in the operating act of his divine will, he also conceives. This same explanation applies to the second time the word conceived is used in this sentence. I conceived in your love, in your pains, in that very volition that was to reign in you. We now continue with the reading. So now you do nothing but give it its rights, providing to it what is needed, so as to have it conceive in you, and for you to receive the rights to have it lay its kingdom, and take in hand the scepter of command with absolute dominion. So, what to you seems nothing and something strange, enters into the first act of the divine will, and your Jesus, looking at you and taking you by the hand, takes you into that act in which he conceived in the maternal womb, in order to let you place your love, your pains, so that your act may not be missing in an act so great that gave the beginning to the kingdom of the divine will in the human family. And this is the reason why in all the acts I did while on earth, I call your love to bind itself to those acts, nor do I want you to let even one escape you. These are rights of justice that my will demands, and are links of connection, in order to give you the right that it might reign in you. Therefore, follow your Jesus without any concern. Then returning to think about the sorrow that the divine will feels in the creation, I would have wanted as many lives for as many sorrows as it feels, so as to sweeten a sorrow so long. And I was thinking of how sorrowful is the state in which the fiat finds itself in creatures. And my lovable Jesus, coming out from within my interior, told me, my daughter, you must know that my divine volition cannot admit the acts of my will into the creature if it does not find itself, because creatures lack the capacity, the dignity, the sanctity, the space to be able to contain even a single act of the supreme will. And this is another of its sorrows. But by the nature of its goodness, it communicates its effects. It happens as to the sun that communicates its effects to the earth, but does not remain in it. Otherwise the earth would become radiant and luminous, while after the sun has passed by, it remains the dark body it is. However, the effects serve to preserve it and to make it produce plants, flowers, and fruits. It also happens, as to the water, that communicates its effects to the earth, but not the font of its life. So much so that when it does not rain, the earth remains dry and does not have the strength to produce a single blade of grass. This is why the earth, possessing neither the life of the sun nor that of the water, has need for the sun to communicate its daily effects, and for the water to water it very often, in order to be preserved and be able to produce. The same happens for the acts of my divine will. It wants to give itself, so that the creature may become sun, in order to be able to form its life. But not finding its will, in its sorrow, taken by the excesses of its goodness, it communicates its effects, that serve to preserve the object of its sorrows. No one can tell you what value, what power, what sanctity, light, and immensity one act of my divine fiat contains, except for your Jesus. And only one who possesses a divine volition can contain its acts. Therefore, only the fiat can raise the creature to the divine sanctity and nobility that gives her the likeness of her Creator. All others, however good and praised because of their ability, ingenuity, doctrine, industriousness, will remain always like earth, that possessing neither the font of light nor of water, will be given as poor beggars the effects of my supreme will. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 22, Part 8. Fiat.